Hey everybody, welcome back to Therapist Theater. I'm your host, Josh Treese. I'm a practicing therapist in Music City, USA, and every week, a guest therapist, counselor, or social worker joins me in the theater to talk about a movie that we've seen and what relationships or mental health issues it highlights. We've been on hiatus for 3 weeks due to some scheduling issues. Yikes! But just like Samuel L. Jackson said in Jurassic Park, hold on to your butts, because like the cartoon dinosaur movie from 1993, we're back. Thanks so much for downloading today's show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And while you're doing that, you can help other people find it by giving the show a 5-star rating and writing a review for it in the podcast app. Oh yeah, and make sure you tell your friends. You can also stay connected with what's happening in the theater by following us on social media. Links to our accounts are in the show notes. This week's guest is Sarah Edwards. Sarah is a rare commodity in that she is a registered drama therapist under the North American Drama Therapy Association. She spends her time collaborating with individuals who have intellectual and developmental disabilities to create original, dignified, and sophisticated performances showcasing their colorful, authentic, and unapologetically unique selves. She believes in the ability of each individual and strives to release the magic found within them by providing opportunities that allow them to maximize their power, purpose, and self-expression. After someone said his name 3 times, Michael Keaton once said, while wearing a black and white striped suit, "It's showtime. Dim the lights, raise the curtain, and start the previews. Welcome to the theater." Sarah, how in the world are you today?
I am doing great, just floating down the river of life.
Well, that's great. I'm so glad to have you on. I want to jump right in and ask you about before you got started in therapy in any way, client, student, practitioner, did you have any concept of what therapy or counseling was? And if you did, where did it come from?
So I grew up in like rural, I can't even say it, rural Tennessee. So I grew up in like the boondocks, and, very like Christian oriented, community. So like, to me, I guess I grew up in as therapy was for crazy people. That is what, so that was for me. So I never, that's what it was.
Do you remember like where you got that message from? Because I would say that I had a similar message in me growing up, but I think for me it was only there had to be something really wrong with you. And I think I got that from, sprinkling a TV, sprinkling of movies. Yeah. Because for us growing up, if you had a normal quote unquote person problem, you went to like your pastor or you went to like your teacher or something like that.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So very similar, I guess, back to like the Christianity aspect is like, God will take care of it, or, there's no need to go to therapy because you have the answers within, like you got it. You need to take care of yourself. So yeah, absolutely.
Was that like a message explicitly given to you in church? Because I know that like in some churches some churches are very against mental health care, whereas some are kind of passively against it, and some have whole counseling departments at the church.
I mean, I think in my experience, it was probably more so like therapy will come to you only if you get to this dark moment, only if you get to this point of hurt or this point of like where you like nothing else is going to help. So like basically therapy was not going to be a part of your life unless you were at rock bottom
It was like an emergency room kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of your understanding of what it was. Um, did you ever like imagine like what went on in therapy?
That's a great question. Um, I guess in my like young developing brain, I guess I thought, lots of crime, tissues, all the secrets within revealed,
Okay. Okay. Um,
I guess I always saw it as something sad, something dark, something depressive. It was never the opposite of that. It was never light or positive. It was always something very dark or heavy,
yeah. Yeah. I'm only going to ask this because I'm just so curious. Like,
Yeah.
because I think that I would have had that same thought in
Mm-hmm.
all of my understandings of therapy and counseling pre becoming a client myself were strictly based off TV and movies. Like it was
Yeah.
because like I grew up in South Carolina, like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know anybody that had gone to counseling. I didn't know any
Mm-hmm.
therapists, so for me, it was just like Fraser Crane, somebody from The Simpsons. It was The
Mm-hmm.
Sopranos. So it was just stuff like that. So that concept of like, okay, I don't fully know what happens in it, but I know that it's sad and dark and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Did you think that like it was those things, but people were getting better? Like it was something to help them get out of that? Or did you think it was a place to like wallow in it? Like,
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, I think I guess I did think that it was a place to get better. But again, I love your analogy of like the emergency room. You only went there unless you were in such a dark place.
yeah.
So yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I did believe at that
So like a
time that
rock
we could
bottom kind of thing. Like once you're there, you can only get better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
That makes sense. So let's go forward just a little bit. Can you tell me like why therapy? Why do you do what you do?
So, I always whenever I meet other therapists or I'm in a therapeutic arena or whatever, I definitely see myself as like a different kind of therapist, because I am a drama therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that can look like a lot of different things. But for me,
Which other Sarah Rogers,
I
told me you guys are like the most ultra rare Pokemon there is.
yes,
Because I had said to her, I've never heard of a like registered drama therapist. And she goes, oh yeah, it's because there's like 2 of us in this state.
Oh, I know. Yeah, and like my number is like in the 600s out of the entire world. Like that's my like my drama therapy number.
Yeah.
Like so there's not that many of us at all. And again, drama therapists, their practice can look like so many different things and with so many different populations. But my practice and my philosophy is all through performance. So the population that I work with most, and that I am most connected to, and that I've really want to use my practice with is teens and adults with disabilities. So performance is the main thing. Getting people with disabilities to a place where they are performing, and that can look like a lot of different things. So, what was the initial question?
Why do you do that? I mean, always great to know what you do, but like, why do you do it?
Why I do it? Yeah.
Because you're saying, okay, so nobody arrives at that population to work with by accident.
Mm-hmm.
You don't back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And B, to be a drama, nobody's going to back into drama therapy either.
Yeah.
So clearly you're there for a reason.
Yeah. So I grew up in theater. I started performing, I guess, when I was in seventh grade, and I loved it. Right. So again, I'm from the Boondocks, and so theater was very a very delicate thing there, and not a lot of us did it. So I actually grew up at the Dixie Carter Performing Arts Center, and Dixie Carter and Hal Holbrook created this theater in Huntington, Tennessee, in the Boondocks. Dixie is from Macklemoresville, which is just a tiny little town, just a blink. And she's amazing, and like, I tell people, you know, in a lot of ways, Dixie Carter kind of saved my life in a way, because she created a safe, creative space for children to come and take class and perform on stage.
I didn't know she was from here.
Yeah, she's from Macklemoresville.
I think, you know, I got her and the character confused. I think I thought she was from Savannah, but only because they were on the show.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So she had a children's theater company that you got involved in.
Yeah, well, she had like a performing arts center that they would bring in shows. They had classes. I mean, she just like really gave such a sacred space for people who were different, you know, who were creative and who didn't play football, you know. And so I fell in love with the arts, like, and she gave me this, you know, that building, that space, those teachers gave me a safe place. And I really found my authentic self. I found who I was through theater. And so, you know, that's where my love of theater started. I actually ended up going to get my undergrad in theater education. So it you know, it was something that I actually wanted to do in my life. Like, I wanted the arts to be a part of my career. And while I was performing, you know, in middle school and high school, once I got to high school, I actually started babysitting a girl with autism. And I did theater classes with her sister, and I got to know, you know, her family, and her mom was like, you know, I think you need to come, and I think you would be great. And I was like, okay, cool. I don't know. Okay. You know, and the other thing with like people with disabilities, again, I grew up in the Boondocks. And so, you know, I kind of had some interaction with people with disabilities, but like back then, when I was younger, I would have an emotional reaction to people with disabilities. Like, I would get emotional, I would get choked up, right? And I know a lot of people who have that reaction when they see someone with a disability, or if they interact with someone with a disability. So that was kind of all I had. And I was like, okay, you know. And, you know, she was nonverbal. And, you know, she was young. She was like 8 when I came. I started babysitting her when I was like, you know, a sophomore in high school. And I will never forget, you know, I was performing, and like everyone in town knew that I was like a performer, you know, but I also was babysitting this child with autism. And her mother, I will never forget, we were in the kitchen, and she was like, you know what, Sarah, I wonder if you could connect these two things together. And I was like, I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't know. I was like, that's pretty cool. But that was kind of the first time that the seed was planted. And it's kind of an emotional moment, because in that time she passed away when I was in college. So there's even more like beauty and magic around that moment for me, because I had someone that saw me, saw her child, saw that things could work. And so that's kind of where it like started for me. And then when I got my master's I got my undergrad in theater education, started teaching, and I was like, oh no, no, this classroom is not my flavor. Definitely, I love the kids, love teaching, but I was like, yeah, I just don't want to be in a traditional classroom. And so my mentor at the time was like, you know, maybe you should think about a couple of things. I got a couple of things that, you know, I was telling her what I was wanting, what I was looking for. And she was like, you know, I I think you should maybe look into applied theater or drama therapy. And I was like, all right, these sound cool. And so I started kind of like, diving in, figuring out those. And then I actually went to California. I looked at a school for applied theater. It was too much money. I didn't feel great about kind of the concepts that they were telling me. And then I went to Kansas State University and toured their drama therapy program. And I was like, this is it. This is it. And the chair of the drama therapy program at Kansas State, they have she's like one of the like pilgrims of using drama therapy with people with disabilities. So I just like absolutely fell in love with it. And that's kind of how it started. I mean, it was in different pockets, but it all just kind of ended up coming together. And I went to grad school, learned more skills, figured out how to really reach people. In undergrad, it was all about the process with theater. And then in grad school, I learned that how important product was. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to give people with disabilities a product that is sophisticated, that is dignified, that is that shares who they are, their stories. I want to do all organic work, all original work. So everything that I do in my practice now, I work at Friends Life Community, which is a nonprofit in Nashville, and we are all about person-centered. We're all about getting the souls, basically, of these, we call them friends, the friends, getting the souls of the friends and just going out and letting them shine. So yeah, so why do I do it? It kind of just organically happened,
Yeah, it sounds like I know that a lot of times when I ask people why therapy, this is certainly part of my why therapy, is maybe the therapist or the person had a point in their life where they felt broken. They went to see somebody, they helped them through it, and they felt like they received a gift, so they want to give it back. It sounds like you had this gift, and then somebody from over here knew that they or their daughter had this need. It was almost like that person was like, oh my gosh, let me try to put these. And then by doing that, it was like something connected in you.
Yes.
There's that old quote about like finding what lights your soul up and a need in the world. And if you can pair those things up,
yes,
that's kind of the thing. And that sounds like kind of what happened with you.
That is exactly what happened. And it's so funny because so many of my friends had such a plan, right? And I never really had a plan. The plan always had me. Like I always, and I tell my clients now and the people that I work with, I'm like, if we all have a spark inside of us. There's always something. We all have something inside of us that's alive. And our job is to respond to your spark. And when you do, it's all going to happen exactly how it's supposed to. And I really believe that's what I did, because I just kept responding to the spark.
Or even if it doesn't happen how it's supposed to, you will feel peace and joy in the midst of it.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which certainly makes maybe times where you feel less certain more bearable.
Yes. Yeah. I always know that there will be magic. And I talk a lot about the work I do. I call it magical chaos. And that was my graduate thesis. I named it Magical Chaos. The first show I ever did with our friends at Friends Life was titled Magical Chaos. And it's just a phrase I use a lot because it really represents this population, and it represents humans, and it represents life, and magical chaos.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I just got done reading the biography of Mr. Rogers, and which, oh my gosh. I say read, I listened to it.
Okay.
But the best part is that the narrator of that book was LeVar Burton. So it's a book on Mr. Rogers read by the guy that did Reading Rainbow, and like every part of my childhood like exploded like a glitter bomb inside of me.
Yes.
But something in the book that was talked about was a concept called guided drift. And it was this recognition that we don't always have total control in our lives to even maybe determine the places that we're heading.
Yeah.
But we have limited control. And so it was kind of like if you're on, a lazy river in a raft, the river's taking you in a direction. You don't have that control. That's the drift part. But occasionally, if you get too close to a side, you can push off the side. Occasionally, there may be a fork in the river, and you can decide which way where those forks are going to go.
Yes.
Which kind of, that kind of reminds me of what you were describing. Like, I don't know if I had a plan had me, and you certainly made choices along the way.
I definitely made choices, and sometimes they were hard. But yeah, kind of, there was always like an inner peace, because I knew I was responding to a spark.
Yeah.
That was within,
Do you, have you ever read Neil Gaiman's stuff?
I haven't.
So he's an author. There's been a lot of like several movies and TV shows made of his stuff. Like he wrote Coraline, but he's a big proponent of creativity, and he's got this talk that he gave at a commencement one time, and I can't remember where, but it's all about living in such a way that fans the flame of your creativity. It's incredible.
Ooh.
And yeah, I mean,
I love that. So it's never going to go out.
Yes. Like look it up. I mean, look it up. You can find it online to like read or watch. But yeah, so he did American Gods. He did Coraline, Graveyard Book, Ocean at the End of the Lane. He did the comic series, The Sandman, back in like the 80s, 90s. He did Stardust, which had Michelle Pfeiffer and Robert De Niro in it, which was very like Princess Bride. He rewrote a book that was kind of like a contemporary telling of Norse mythology. Like, so he's very kind of like sci-fi fantasy kind of, but he, in something that I read of his, was talking about, and he even recognized this was a very privileged place to be, that early on in his career, he was working at a newspaper, and I think he was like a mail person there, like down in the mail room. He picked up the mail, took it to people, and he had the opportunity to go to a different department where he could either write copyright for the paper, so like want ads, or he could become a photographer. And the photographer job paid more, and you had the chance to like maybe get a picture on the front page. But he had decided, I want to be an author. I want to be a novelist. Like I want to write. And so he decided early on, I only want to do things that take me closer to becoming an author. So he said he made the decision to not take the photography job because it wasn't writing. So it didn't take him anywhere closer to that. And he said anytime he had kind of those fork in the road moments, he always picked the thing that got him closer to doing the kind of writing he wanted. And so it's kind of like what you were saying, recognizing that thing that sparks your soul and following that.
Yes.
And I like that Neil said, this was a privileged thing I did. Like not everybody can do that, has the means to do that, but he had a chance to. And it's something that I think that I found that bit of wisdom from him like early on in grad school. So there were times where, when I was going through grad school, I had the chance in my side job to get promoted and do some things that way. And I always had to ask myself, well, does this get me closer to having a private practice and therapy? Or does it take me farther away? And I always thought it takes me farther away. So I just kept chasing down that thing that I knew that I wanted, that thing that I knew that made me happy, even though it wasn't as much money, even though it,
Right. Yeah.
But in a similar way, like it's ended up, I'm at a place where I'm happier.
Sure. Yes. And it's so interesting because like you say you're at a place where you're happy, And I
That's a
think
really loaded statement too. Like
I know.
I don't mean like
But
circumstantially, everything's going great. I mean that I
no,
have like inner peace.
inner peace.
I feel content.
Yes,
I know that I have the resources inside of me to face the adversities that come in my life. Like
exactly.
that's what I mean, instead of just like, yeah, I got a smile plastered on my face all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I really believe that we can't, we all can get to inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that looks different for everyone, and that journey is different for everyone, but I do believe that everyone can get to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes from connecting with yourself.
Mhm.
If you
Mhm.
know, if you can know your values, your principles, the things that are important to you, and you
Yeah.
can make choices that align with those, which
Mhm.
not everybody can,
It's
but
true.
if you can, if you can do that, I think you can have inner peace. Even if you can't, I make those choices, I think you can still have peace, but it's choosing your reactions to things. It's choosing your,
Yes.
it's recognizing what you can control.
Mhm.
It's like the
Mhm.
serenity prayer in recovery. Grant me the
Mhm.
serenity to accept the things I can't
Mhm.
change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think
Absolutely.
if you don't have the chance to make all the choices you want to make, you
Mhm.
serenity prayer yourself into inner peace.
Absolutely. Yes. I totally agree with that. And it is, I mean, it really is a choice, and I mean, it is action. Like, I had to keep that action going. I had to moving, keep moving. But yeah.
So let's talk about a movie.
Okay.
We had an interesting way at arriving at our movie.
Yes, we did.
I don't pitch movies to cover to guests. I like the
Mhm.
guests to pick them because then it like attaches to
Mhm.
their soul and it's a better
Yeah.
experience. But
Mhm.
you pitched me a TV show,
I
and
did.
in your pitch, I saw like the seed of something that was
Mhm.
also in a movie that I've had in my back pocket that I've wanted to cover for a while. So I was like, hey, what about this thing over here? What do you think about
Yeah.
what do you think about this? And you picked it up, you caught it,
Oh, I
and
caught it.
yeah. So
I ate it.
what movie do you want to talk about today?
The peanut butter falcon.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely incredible movie.
It sure is. It's
Um,
really well done.
yeah. So in
Mhm.
your, you had originally said, let's talk about Secret Life of the American Teenager.
Mhm.
And what was your reasoning for wanting to talk about that?
Yeah. So, it's so funny. I mean, that show, I mean, it's a good show, but it's kind of like a teen show. But what stood out to me with that TV show is that one of the main characters has a brother that is written in the script in having Down syndrome. And I was just absolutely amazed of how well they wrote this character. So, but the main thing is that they casted the character that they written as having Down syndrome. They actually casted an actor with Down syndrome. And I had told you in the email
Mm-hmm.
how that is very rare in film. And so that's why you brought up Peanut Butter Falcon. And I have actually been wanting to see this film. I've been needing to see this film. So it finally gave me the push too. And I was very glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just had a thought on something. There was a
Mm-hmm.
controversy a couple of weeks ago. Sia, the
I
singer.
was I was gonna talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
love
So,
Sia. I love me some Sia. I love me Maddie from Dance Moms,
mhm.
which Maddie and Shia LaBeouf, who is also in or the
Peanut
Peanut
Butter
Butter
Falcon.
Falcon. Shia LaBeouf and Maddie were in one of Sia's videos, and it is
Oh,
incredible.
huh.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. So the controversy there, Sia, I don't know if it's already been
Yes.
released, but the trailer is releasing a movie
Yeah.
where she has a character who
Mm-hmm.
has autism,
Yes.
but cast Maddie in the role of that character. And the controversy came in two parts, all on Twitter, because a lot of individuals who have autism responded saying, oh, you cast a neurotypical person in this role when all of us are out here
Exactly
wanting to work. And
yes.
then like Sia like doubled down
I
and really
know.
responded in the worst way. Like,
I know.
I mean, I think that she went to a place of defensiveness and
Sure.
she like tried to light some people up. It was bad. It was
I
bad.
know. I know. Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was actually I had read that like a week ago and I was like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But when I pitched you this movie,
Mm-hmm.
I included this part that I saw on the trivia on IMDb, and it was that the movie grew out of the fact that the main character Zach is played by a guy named Zach who has Down syndrome. And in IMDb, the trivia says that it came about because the directors met him at a camp for and I'll just read straight from IMDb, for disabled and non-disabled people, and he expressed his desire to be a movie star. So they wrote a script around him and his hopes and dreams that bled into the script, and people they knew who would allow them to film for free without permits. So like this kid stumbled on a genie's lamp and rubbed it, and his dreams came true, and it's the greatest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really it was done so well, and like you know, it just like I think I had told you this earlier, it just the way they wrote him in just really gave such a space of normality, and it was just very raw and real. And one thing I had told you too is they don't have subtitles a lot of times. Like people will put subtitles just for the person with a disability or for everyone involved so they don't feel left out. But to not have subtitles and really just let you experience this person and this movie and these moments, I really, really loved that. That really stood out to me at the very beginning.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, both in Secret Life and the Peanut Butter Falcon, they gave such dignity to the character.
That's what I wanted to kind of circle back to, is you had said in your work, you were all about giving people dignity. And I think that like as a sibling, as a brother of somebody who has autism, something that is a really easy trigger for my anger is when I feel like somebody treats my brother as less than a whole person.
Yes.
And I think that like dignity is all about treating somebody I was going to say as if they are worthy of honor and respect. Of course they are. It's treating somebody with honor and respect. As if they are a complex, whole person, no matter what their ability is. Because they are.
Yes. And you know, it's like a lot of the work that I do, we have an advocacy through the arts program here at Friends Life, and the three components of when we create performance art pieces around each friend, and the three components are discovering your voice, telling your story, and connecting with others through shared experience. And one of the things we actually got into the Nashville Film Festival with one of our films that we created like a year and a half ago, which is super cool. And we had an interview with them, and one of the things that you know that I had mentioned is that, you know, and I learned this back in grad school, is that every story is perfect. Every story that a person holds is perfect, and it is worth being told.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't matter who you are. Your story is perfect. And that's why I really like Peanut Butter Falcon, because, you know, his story was wanting to be a wrestler, and the dignity and sophistication that supported his story and his vision, it was just great. It was so well done. And, you know, I wanted to be a wrestler by the end, you know. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there were so many things that connected to me personally in the movie. There, you know, it was, you know, Zach just as a person and as an actor and as a character, but also like, listen, I grew up in South Carolina. I grew up watching professional wrestling for as long as I can possibly remember.
Mm-hmm.
It is like literally sprinkled throughout all of these important parts of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I camped out for tickets to it when I was a senior in high school. Like, I mean, I loved it. There were two actual professional wrestlers in the movie. Mick Foley and Jake the Snake Roberts were in it. So like,
wait, I didn't even realize that was my dad and brother love wrestling. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he was at the end, at the final match. He was the ref. He was the ref with a giant beard.
Oh, okay. He did look familiar. Okay,
yep.
okay.
And of course, Jake the Snake was his opponent in that final match. Masterful bad guy that he was in the 80s, also tapping into that in this movie. So the movie, I think, presents him as a whole person. They don't have him at the beginning in this like perfect scenario.
Yeah.
He's, I think, a ward of the state. Like they say that he doesn't have a family.
Yes. And you know, it was so interesting because I did not know where this movie was going to go. And when it first showed him getting some food, I think from an aging adult, an elderly person, and then I realized he was surrounded. I was like, oh no.
Did you think he was in prison when it opened? I thought he was in prison when it opened, when I first saw it.
No, I knew that he was at an assisted living or retirement facility. Okay. And that's why I said, oh no. But I'm glad that they exposed that, because a lot of people with disabilities are put in these situations. And he even says, you are old and I am not. Why am I here? And one of the things I actually loved that they let Zach do is he advocated for himself. The entire movie, that man advocated for himself. And I just applauded it, because a lot, you know, that's what we teach here at Friends Life, to advocate for your needs, your wants. If you don't want to do something, say no, consent, you know, all of these things. And to be honest, I don't think there was a moment where he wasn't advocating for himself.
He was a very active character in his own story.
Yes.
He wasn't a person that things happened to. He was the driving force of the story, like his choices, his decisions. And I think a lot of movies that do have a person with disabilities in them.
You got it.
Actually, I don't even know if I'm using the right term. Let me be humble for a second. Is it differently abled? Like, is there a...
Yeah, I mean, we use the word neurotypical or typical. Those are the phrases we use, you know, in the disability community.
Versus neurodivergent.
I mean, I think that is also welcome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I want to be sensitive to that. And I mean, having grown up with a sibling, like, I mean, we were kids in the 90s, and there's a lot of things that have changed since then.
So many things.
And so I am a little bit ashamed to say, like, I haven't kept up with all of like the language preferences.
Yeah.
So, you know, listeners, if I do say something wrong, shoot me an email. Like, I'd love to be able to move forward saying something different. But I think, you know, this is his story, his choices drive it, his wants, his desires. And I don't know if there's anything better than the picture that he drew for the old lady in the cafeteria at the beginning to explain his plan. Basically, I will trade you my pudding if you help me escape. And he drew that as a way to show her. It was great.
It was so great. I also just loved his support system there. You know, the kid who pushed him into the water, obviously didn't talk to him like an adult.
Wait, was that at the place, or was that after when he was on the platform?
Yeah, when he was up. Yeah, it was at the other place. But if you watch the woman and the woman who tried to help him escape with the pudding, and then the man who actually helped him escape, they never talked to him like he was a child, because that's a huge thing. And I'm sure you probably experienced that with your brother, is that people will talk to people with a disability like they are children. And, one of the things we do here at Friends Life is... Or
like they're deaf.
They're a child, or they don't talk, they talk through them. So if there's a person next to them, they're going to talk to that person to see how they feel.
Like people do with their puppies.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
and
their
it's
pet.
Degrading. And it absolutely infuriates me. But to see these two aging adults in this retirement facility treat him like an adult, and like I love how they talk to him. And of course Shia LaBeouf is the same way, and it's just amazing. Now Eleanor, the girl,
I would assume it's like his caseworker.
Yes.
Yeah.
She does not. She talks. She, in her mind, in some of the things she says and the way she interacts with him, he is childlike to her until the end. You can kind of see it open. But
I could see that. I kind of wondered, and I'm thinking of the part near the beginning where he had tried to escape. He gets tackled outside, and then like full on football tackled. And then like the next scene he's in his room and Eleanor comes in to talk with him about it. I which there's no excuse, impact over intention, but I got the sense that maybe it's not that she was trying to treat him as less than so much as it was she maybe had like 12 other cases and she just needed to get this thing wrapped up so she could get home.
Yeah.
But like I say, like impact over intention, if the result is that she treats him less than, it doesn't matter why. Like it just matters that it happened and how it.
Yeah. Well, she kind of had like a baby talk essence. Like that when I started watching, I really honed in on how did these people interact with him, because in Secret Life there was not one person that interacted with this character Tom. They all treated him like an adult and like talked to him like an adult. But she, Eleanor and Peanut Butter Falcon, I just kept kind of like seeing, your
radar was up.
Yeah, it was up. It's always up though. So, but yeah, so he, he's such an advocate, and I'm so curious. Do you know if did he help write this script?
He didn't. So not in the sense of like writing dialogue, but from the little bit I can gather from the IMDb page, it was just discussions he had with the directors where they found out who he was as a person.
Yeah.
And what he wanted in life and things he enjoyed. And then they wrote a script based on those things.
Yeah. Which is just brilliant.
Yeah.
So you could see Zach as an actor. You could see his, intentionality and his passion. And there was like this true emotion, which again, that makes me so happy to hear too. Because again, that's the stuff that I do with the work that I do.
Yeah.
Is honing into their soul and seeing, letting the world know who they are. And that's exactly what Peanut Butter Falcon was. We got to know Zach.
Yeah. He did. Now, I mean, he did improv some things.
Sure.
Like they said that the first time Shia asks him, what's the number one rule? And he says party. Like that was an improv. Like he just said that on set. And
brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I mean, this is just like this gem of a movie where it really
Mhm.
does feel like the directors met this incredible young man and they just
Mhm.
said, our goal is to make a movie with this guy. How do
Mhm.
we do that? Like, how do
Yeah,
we,
it's really cool.
yeah. So he fails in his attempt to escape when he traded the pudding, which that plan was the older lady like faked choking and then he just ran. But then
He like
he
gave her the cue and everything. I was like, that.
mhm.
Oh,
He
love
gets
it.
taken back to his room with Carl, played by Bruce Dern, who has won an Oscar. And late at night, Carl's just like, I used to be an engineer. So he totally, and they put bars on the window to keep him from getting out. He totally does the thing that Jackie Chan did in Shanghai Noon,
Okay.
where he takes some shirts or something, puts them on the bars, wets them, and then puts his cane in there and begins cranking it to where the bars open up. And
Yeah.
then he gives Zach a thing of hand soap and says,
Uh
put this
huh.
all over your body to make you slick. And he slips through the
Uh huh.
bars and
Uh
just
huh.
takes off down the road in his tidy whities.
I know. Now let me tell you. When I first saw that moment, I cringed. I cringed a little bit because again, I was like, "Ooh, dignity, integrity," and it kind of hurt. But let me tell you, by the end of that movie, well, because he goes on a while in just underwear.
Yeah. Yeah.
But by the time that him and Shia LaBeouf they're around a campfire,
Uh-huh.
and I think he's still in his whitey tighties at this time.
Well, but
Because
he
in
had
that
gotten
moment,
clothes in between then.
okay, oh, that's
Shia
right,
had either given him some clothes or he got clothes
that's
from
right.
that tower where those boys were being mean to him. He had taken them off because they got drunk around the campfire. So he had
That's
taken his
right.
clothes off. But and
That's
go
right.
back a little bit. Tell me like why that part with him escaping in his underwear got you a little.
Well, so another like part of my identity, I guess, as a therapist is as I also see myself, especially working with people with disabilities, as an activist.
Mm-hmm.
I never ever would have ever used that word to describe the work I do, but now it's one of the top words.
Yeah.
And so I'm always trying to advocate for
Mm-hmm.
people with disabilities, and of course to help them advocate for themselves. But I'm constantly, and even the work that the friends do, we try to take down any stigma,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of stigma away from what society sees as people with disabilities. So society is already against people with disabilities. And so I think that there's an element of like, oh my gosh, no, he's running away and all he has is underwear and there's no one around to advocate for him.
Hmm.
And he's in his underwear, completely vulnerable. So there's a vulnerability aspect to it
Yeah.
too.
I think I saw that and I thought his desire to get out of the extended care
Mm-hmm.
facility was greater than his
Mm,
desire to not be in his tidy whities covered in hand soap squeezing out their window. And
mm,
so to me, it was one of
mm-hmm.
these moments,
That's fair.
the end of Shawshank. Like he crawls through a sewer covered in poop because he's pursuing something that he wants more than so I think
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't think too much about it, but even thinking about it right now, I just saw it as here's my chance. How bad do I want it? I'm taking it.
Mm. Well, I ended up not caring, and
Yeah.
I even thought to myself, there was a point in the movie. I get maybe it was before the campfire, but I guess the campfire maybe I think it was that moment. Even though you're right, he did get on some clothes in between.
Mm-hmm.
But when I saw him so free,
Mm-hmm.
where he was with Shia LaBeouf and he was really taking on this moment. He was in his white tights and I was like, I don't even care. I don't care anymore because he is free.
Mm-hmm.
And he is owning that freedom right now.
You know what I thought was interesting? It was that there weren't many parts in the movie that showed him as being scared.
Oh, uh-huh.
Like there was the
Uh-huh.
part at the very end, right before he got into the wrestling ring. He was scared there.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, the movie didn't really show him as being scared, and not in a foolish way, not like he's being presented with danger and he doesn't understand it, and because of that he's not scared, but he for the most part was this character that was very centered, connected with himself, knowing what he wants and not afraid to ask people for help in getting it. Which, give me a break, like how many of us problems asking people for help in getting the things that we need?
Yeah, and one of the things I was thinking, he needed help physically, right? We all, and I always, anytime I talk to my clients, I'm like, they say I can't do this, and it's like, we all have things we can't do. We all have things we can do. But one of the things that came to my brain and my heart in that moment is like, Tyler, who, Shia LaBeouf, Tyler helped him physically, right? He did help him physically in a lot of ways. And then of course you see where Zach helps Tyler with his heart, and one of
and vice versa.
And vice versa, absolutely. And and that one of my favorite moments is when they're sitting on the boat that they built, and I don't even really remember what is said, but I remember Shia LaBeouf surrendering his head and leaned up against Zach, and they had this moment. He
started crying. Yeah. I think Zach said something to him about like them sticking together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it literally, I mean, his heart was, Tyler's heart was he finally surrendered it to someone else. He surrendered his pain.
Yeah. He struck me as a character that was in such hypervigilance. Because like at the beginning of the movie, the way that Zach and Tyler meet, Zach has of course escaped. He ends up down at like a dock. He gets down into a boat and covers it. He's still in his tighty-whities, covers himself with like a tarp, like in the boat. And Tyler had either with that boat or another boat, like gone out into the I think this is taking place in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, like the marsh or the whatever, to steal some crabs that were in crab pots from another person. So now these guys that it belonged to are chasing Tyler. He jumps down into the boat that Zach's in and takes off. And at some point while he's there, Zach, he like cuts off the motor, try to hide from these other guys. And Zach like throws up in the boat because in his tighty-whities in the sun, just went for this thing where he's covered up and the boat's moving and all that. And Tyler like jumps back and puts his hand over his mouth and is like, be quiet. That's how they meet. And like, Zach expresses to him, I'm trying to get to this wrestling camp that my favorite wrestler runs, the Saltwater Redneck. And he's like, great. Well, it's in that town. So you go that way. I'm going this way. And I think at one point they're on a sandbar. He literally just says to him, like, can you help me? And he decides, all right, well, we'll go as far as X because that's kind of where the path diverges. Along the way, they meet Eleanor or whatever. But like, as they stop, they just start to have these conversations. And I mean, I think for me, we've talked about the bonfire several times, but like that scene around the bonfire where they connect, there's so many things that happen. Like Zach starts laughing maniacally, like an evil henchman or whatever. And he's like, why? Tyler's like, why are you laughing? He's like, oh, because I'm going to be a bad guy. Why are you going to be a bad guy? Well, because that's what they told me that I am. Who told you that? My teachers and my coach. What did your coach tell you? He said, he said, I'm a Down syndrome. Like that's my identity. And then he said, I am, and he used the R word.
Whoo, let me tell you,
Yeah.
the hearing those was so hard.
It's very dehumanizing.
Very
Like
hard.
if you're listening to this and you know somebody that's a stickler for language and against using words like this, it's not because they just don't like a word. It's because when you use a word to make somebody less than, you take away their humanity, you take away their dignity. And so he said, because my coach told me these things about myself, I'm going to be a bad guy.
Yeah, I'm going to believe him.
Yes, I'm going to take it on. And Tyler says, you're not a bad guy. He said, you have a good guy heart. And it's so strong. There's nothing you could do to change it if you wanted. And here is this character that's so in pain himself, recognizing in Zach the fullness of his personhood.
Yes.
And like walking him back into it and saying, no, you are strong. You are good. You can be what you want. So here he is like helping him find his inner strength, but then kind of go into what you were saying, as far as like physically helping him. Zach wants to put a log on the fire. He's a little drunk.
Yeah.
So he's like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And Tyler's like, no, you totally can. And he's like, you got to find he says, an alternate ego. You got to have a wrestler name. What's your name? And he's like, Falcon. So Tyler grabs some things, straps some branches to his back.
He kept making props. I thought it was so funny.
He did
that a couple of times.
Yeah, he like makes him a do-it-yourself Falcon costume.
Yeah.
Starts putting war paint on him, scoops out some peanut butter from a jar, uses that as war paint. Here's the name, Peanut Butter Falcon. Roll the credits, And in doing that, Zach lifts the log, which he thought he couldn't do. Tyler like helps him find his inner strength. And by doing that, he finds his outer strength. Yes, his independence. He shows him, no, you can do this thing. And I think that that's like something that I have, like, I don't know if I'm an advocate or not, but it's something that like growing up with a brother, like I've always been passionate about is like, don't decide for a person what they can and can't do ahead of time. Let them decide, give them the opportunity and help them know that you're there for them if they need you.
Yes.
And if they need to ask for help, they'll ask for it. And if they don't, then sweet.
Yes. And it's so funny because all of that is true. And it also, all of that was flipped as well when it comes to Tyler.
Yeah.
Because Tyler asked Zach, do you think I'm a good guy or a bad guy? And at that time, Tyler thought he was a bad guy because he thought he killed his brother driving drunk and falling asleep at the wheel. And then
gosh, that part broke my heart.
I know. And then Zach gives him that space and said, no, you're a good guy.
Listen, on the boat, that's where he leaned his head. That's where he started crying. That's the part.
Okay. There it is. Yeah. So they were that for each other, you know.
And I got to tell you, like I say it all the time. I said for 35 years that my brother was my favorite human on planet Earth.
Yeah.
He has lost that position. He's now my number 2, only because my wife.
I bet your wife's number 1.
He's number 1. She's number 1. But I say that because, as we were growing up, our parents got divorced. Dad left, mom stayed, but mom kept things together. And so for a lot of the time, like we just had each other. And there were times where Caleb offered me support that I'm ashamed to say at the time I wasn't looking to him for. But my brother is an extremely empathetic person.
Yeah.
Who is able to see what people are feeling
Yes.
To a certain extent, he's like an emotional mirror. So if you come at him in one way, presenting, an affect of a certain type, he kind of reflects that back. But like I've told Mom before, there was a time where I was sitting in my room, sad about something, teenage angst and all. And like Caleb comes in, he was probably like 8 or something, and sat next to me on the bed and put his arm around me. And at the time, I'm like, what are you doing? And he literally looked at me and said, Josh, I'm just loving you.
Yeah.
And there were so many times where, growing up, like, he's what I had. He was my partner in crime. And I am, so much of who I am is based off of the lessons I learned loving and being loved by my brother.
Yes. And and a lot of people that you talk to who have had a deep relationship with someone with a disability will say those things.
Yeah.
The same things. Yeah.
And really, if a person treats a person with a disability as less than, you're the one missing out. Like, I mean, it's the same as if you were to treat any person as if they have less humanity than you. Because, I mean, who was it? I don't know if it was Walt Whitman or somebody that said, I'm large, I contain multitudes. Everybody has worlds inside of them that if you're not curious, I mean, here's a Ted Lasso quote. Like, if you're judgmental instead of being curious, then you just miss out on. You don't ever get that bonus from them. Good night. I love this movie so much.
It's so good. It's so layered.
What's interesting, I think, is that, the plot gets jump started by Zach's escape. He meets Tyler. Eleanor starts pursuing. She's got to get Zach back, is what she's told. She comes into the story later, meets Tyler first, as he's in a I don't know, convenience store, whatever. He hits on her, and then you find out, like, her pain. She's a widow whose husband died.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
she's kind of about that. She's kind of pouring her, like, I think the reason why she cares so much about her clients is there's this certain amount of cognitive dissonance. Like, oh, these are people I can care about without, like, going all the way in.
Yes. I also just love, like, I think they were at a campsite or something, and she had come and she was like, okay, I'm ready to take him. Like, he's got to come. And he's like, no, he's fine. And she's like, no, we have to go. He's like, no, he's good. Yeah. Like, which I feel like that, again, there's such a society moment of that too. Like, Eleanor, like, he can't do, like, Eleanor was representing society.
She's making a decision for him. He can't do it
by himself. Yeah. He can't do this. He needs help. He needs me. He needs help. And Shia LaBeouf, Tyler was, representing what they need, what people with disability need, that advocate of, no, he can make his own decisions. Yeah. He can answer for himself.
I think at one point he even said, like, why don't you ask him what he wants?
Yeah.
Because he doesn't, like, Shia wasn't trying to, like, kidnap Zach. Yeah. He wasn't trying to be willful and, like, just oppose Eleanor. I think by the time we get to that point in the story, he genuinely cares about Zach so much.
Yes.
That he wants to help him achieve what he wants. And, while they're standing by a palm tree or whatever it was, arguing about, is he going to stay? Is he going to go?
Yeah.
Zach grabs her car keys and walks over to the ocean and says, I'm not going, and throws her car keys in the ocean.
And he made the decision for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. I love that part. But I tell you, one of the scenes that just came to my brain too, I don't think I'm ever going to get this picture out of my head. It's the moment where Zach lifts his component, which I'm like, was that real? It's like,
so
the final match.
They end up making it to the wrestling camp. He gets to meet Saltwater Redneck, but unfortunately, the camp was shut down 10 years prior. Now, this is where like I totally connect with something with my brother. My brother, who is, oh gosh, he's 34.
Mm-hmm.
He is obsessed with professional wrestling from the 1980s.
Oh, okay.
That certain decade.
Yeah.
So he has got so many DVDs of it.
Mm-hmm.
He's also got VHS tapes left over.
Mm-hmm.
He still rocks the combo like DVD VCR player.
Yes.
Yeah. So it turns out this tape that Zach had been watching at his place that he was at the beginning is like crazy old. So the wrestling camp had been shut down 10 years prior to when they arrive.
Mm-hmm.
But like Tyler goes up and talks to the Saltwater Redneck and is like, can you just wave? Like, this has been his dream. Can you just wave at him? Maybe talk to him. And when Saltwater Redneck meets him, he decides like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to train this kid. I don't know the full camp, like whatever, but I'm going to do a little bit, you know? So they start training and they have like a backyard wrestling league that they go to, and he's going to have a wrestling match against Jake the Snake Roberts, whose character name is whatever. I don't know what his name was, but in the match, Jake the Snake like starts to like beat him up for real. He's like, I'm going to teach this kid a lesson. And apparently the Saltwater Redneck's finishing move was the atomic throw, I think is what he called it. And that's what Zach wanted to learn.
Yeah.
So I guess like climactic moment of the movie, Eleanor, Tyler, and Zach are all at this wrestling show. Eleanor is saying he can't do it, he can't do it, he can't do it. So Tyler, like anybody would, pulls out a set of fur-laced handcuffs.
Where did you get that? That was not in his backpack.
And handcuffs her to the steering wheel of the car.
Yeah.
They start to prep for the match. This is the only place in the whole movie where I see Zach get scared is when they're in this like shed and he's getting ready to walk out. And he says, I can't do it. And Tyler, once again, helps him reach inside and says, no, I need you to say you can. I want to hear you say you can do it. And he helps him find his like passion.
Yes. I know. And I just love how Tyler talked to him, because he's like, no, you ain't doing that right now. Stop. Because like sometimes, again, he had still such a sophisticated, like equal like way of talking to, but yeah.
He just accepted Zach for who he was.
Yes.
It was never a matter of like, well, I'll overcompensate for the deficiencies that Zach has. It was just, no, Zach's a person.
Yeah.
And he's with me and we're partners and we're doing this together.
We're friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he, once again, constructs a Falcon costume for him, like out of nowhere.
It cracked me up. I was like, are you like a costume designer? This little like, fisherman.
He needs to be on one of those like shows where that's what you do. Yeah.
I got so tickled every time he did.
Yeah. So Zach goes out to the ring. He has entrance music playing on a boom box. He gets in the ring and he starts the match. And that's where Jake the Snake, like, he starts calling him names. He starts beating him up. And Tyler's on the side and he shouts to him, like, do you still want to do, like, basically he's letting him do it, but he's also telling him, I'm here for you. Do you still want to do this?
I love that moment.
It's support.
Because he did. He gave him the choice.
Yeah.
And he let him decide.
And Zach gives him the thumbs up.
Thumbs up in pain.
Gosh, yes. Yeah. And then two things happen at the same time in that scene. Zach is in the physical conflict of the match. And at the same time, these guys that have been chasing Tyler for the whole movie because of the crab pots that he stole, they show up at the show.
I know.
They get out of the truck with a crowbar in their hand. And the thing kicks into slow motion.
Yep.
Zach finds his inner peanut butter falcon. And Zach is what? 5'2", like
Yeah, he's really short.
he's not a big dude. Jake the Snake is like 6'5",
Yeah.
6'6". He's a big dude. He picks him up above his head, gorilla presses him. I guess that's the atomic throw.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he throws him over the top rope, clearly like wire work, because he's like 10 feet in the air soaring.
I know, it's so funny.
So you have this moment where Zach's dream is coming to fruition,
Yes.
while at the same time, these bad dudes are running towards Tyler with a crowbar. As you see Jake the Snake flying, you see one of the guys raise the crowbar up, swing it, and the scene cuts right before it's going to hit Tyler in the head. So it's like you see the culmination of one story and the consequences of another hitting at the same time.
Woo! Yep.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
And then when the lights come back up, the scene comes back up, it's just Zach and Eleanor in a car.
I know, and
oh my God. Listen, absolutely. Okay. The name of the movie's in the episode. Listen, if you're this far into the episode and you haven't seen it, we have spoiled it for you already.
I know. I was like, he can't die.
Yeah, I thought he was dead because he wasn't there. And they crossed the border into Florida.
Yeah.
And Zach just reaches in the back seat and kind of rustles. And like Tyler looks bad. Like clearly he got hit in the head with a crowbar.
He looked really bad. That makeup artist whoever that was, they did good.
Yeah. But where we leave them is they've decided, the three of them,
I know,
to become a family.
I know. And because you see Tyler's hand come on Eleanor's shoulder. And I was like, oh no, that's so sweet.
And I think it's this like beautiful example of I didn't think it was like trauma bonding. It wasn't like people going, we all have a similar hurt, so let's be intense. Let's be intense with each other. Yeah. Instead of intensity, they chose, because I don't think it's unusual when two people that have the same hurts to get together to get really serious really quick. The feelings are really intense, but they're not really intimate. And it wasn't that. It was these three people recognized that they weren't perfect, that they had limitations, but that they loved being around the others. Yeah. So it wasn't like, I can't do life without you, but my life is better with you.
Ooh, nice. That's it.
And they chose to be together as a family, and it was beautiful.
Very beautiful. Yeah. And it was, the simplicity of it all was just super magical. Like, I couldn't get over that too. It's just, the plot was so simple.
Yeah, you didn't need to have a map to track this thing. It wasn't like a Christopher Nolan movie where if you go to the bathroom, you might as well not come back.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.
It was great.
It was really good. And I'm just someone who is in, the performing arts realm. I'm just so proud to see people doing work like that. And having people who are well known be a part of it, like Shia LaBeouf, and the guy who was in the nursing home,
Bruce Dern, Dakota Johnson. I mean, she was,
they were just
Thomas Hayden Church. Thomas Hayden Church was the Saltwater Redneck. He's been nominated for an Oscar for Sideways, I think.
Look at that,
Paul Giamatti. Yeah,
and that's because people with disabilities have such a stigma. It's just beautiful to have these entities come in and support, and it helps give them integrity and helps tell their story. And so, it's really cool.
The three, I don't know, I think you said values or directives that you guys have: discovering your voice, telling your story, connecting with others through shared experience. That's the essence of life. That's the essence of differentiation.
Woo, you'll get me choked up.
That's the essence of a relationship. Like, that's beautiful. And I think that with that being your mission for the population that you serve, like that's, I don't want to say it's giving someone their humanity. It's certainly helping somebody recognize their own humanity. Like, you can't give somebody humanity. You have it innately. But to help somebody become awake to it within themselves,
Mm.
that's the essence of everything in life.
And and another thing that we do here at Friends Life too is through performance is having other people witness that. The therapeutic element of having other people you love, people you sort of know, people you don't know, people you look up to, that can witness that. Witness your voice, witness your story.
Yeah.
Be a part of that shared experience. Yeah.
There's a line from a movie with Dustin Hoffman and Susan Sarandon and Jake Gyllenhaal. I think it's called Moonlight Mile. It's they're a married couple. Jake Gyllenhaal was gonna marry their daughter, but the daughter dies. And then the movie is about the three of them processing their grief together.
Oh, yeah.
And there's this line that he is saying to Jake Gyllenhaal about his marriage. And he's like, it's promising to witness someone's life. And by witnessing it, showing that person that their life mattered.
Which goes back to every story is worth being told.
Yeah.
No matter what that story is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that every therapist will tell you everybody makes sense in the context of their story. Like, it's not that their decisions are necessarily healthy or wise or what you would have picked or whatever, but if you know a person's story, their decisions and choices will make sense to you. It's just, are you willing to take the time to learn it? Is there anything else in the movie that sticks out to you?
Wow, this is so deep. I feel like I need to do we need that background music, some snapping, some drums at the end of this. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm a big Shia LaBeouf fan. I think he's crazy, but I love his work. And so I think, I don't know, just this question that you just asked, I still am just so, I'm just thankful to him to be in a film like this and support someone with a disability. Because Shia LaBeouf, I mean, he has been all over the board, and so it was really, really cool to see him in a movie like this.
Yeah. I think I'm sure that most directors or casting agents think this, but if you can find somebody whose name has some weight behind it to be in your project, all of a sudden your project's in front of more eyeballs than it would have been before.
I know, which, I mean, again, being activists, advocates for people with disabilities. It's just, I want to see more and more of that. And I hope that continues. Cause you think about even up until the 80s, people with disabilities were still hidden. They're still hidden in rural America and everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate them pushing this. Cause did this movie win anything? I feel like it did. I feel like it did. Maybe not.
So, I mean, it didn't win any major awards.
Okay.
But I'm looking on the page right now. 1 of 3 matches. 21 wins. So it was nominated for an AFCA, Austin Film Critics. So it got some things. It got some nominations in some film festivals. It won at a few.
Yeah.
But I would be shocked if it didn't win some things for representation.
I know.
It doesn't look like it did, though. It won. It won at South by Southwest. I mean, that's a big.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like it got anything for representation, which I'm shocked at. But sometimes that's a matter of timing. Like, a movie comes out at a certain time and it just can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm wondering if you could share something with me that you have learned from your clients.
Mm. You know, this question is so hard for me. And I think it's hard for me in a variety of ways. But I think ultimately, they have taught me to love unconditionally,
Mm-hmm.
love without boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've said many times about my brother that he has no prejudice with
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like when he meets somebody, he doesn't develop an idea about that person
Yeah.
based on anything other than his experience with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it is just this pure form
Mm-hmm.
of love.
And it's consistent.
Yeah.
It's like eternal. And it's really amazing to me. I still can't ever get over it. And everyone I work with is like that.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. And I think as a consequence too, like one of the things that is a big sad for me is when I've seen people hurt him
Mm-hmm.
and I see him carry that hurt. Like he'll
Mm-hmm.
respond differently to them after. And it
Yeah.
makes me want to grab that person and say, don't you dare taint this pure and wonderful
Mm-hmm.
heart
Mm-hmm.
with your unprocessed garbage.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons to it for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
How have they?
but
So
yeah.
I think that you obviously anybody that works with people in a helping profession, we have the
Mm-hmm.
best job in the world because we get to bear witness to people
Mm,
staring down their most difficult things in life and with courage stepping into them.
yeah.
And so, to do this job without using the word inspiration, I think is
Mm-hmm.
impossible.
Sure.
But I mean, how have your clients in there showing you how to love unconditionally?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how has that fleshed itself out?
Um, like for me
Yeah.
personally, yeah. Um, I mean, they love unconditionally, and they have this like courage that I've never seen in like neurotypical people,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe courage isn't even the word. Um, but yeah, I mean, inspiration is definitely a big word that comes to mind. But I think that they've taught me to just like, it's so hard to articulate. This is like this is the hardest question you've given me on this thing. It's so hard because I just have so many things.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I told you before, like it's easy to get bottlenecked because you have all of
Oh,
these thoughts you want to get out at the same time and then they won't all
yeah.
fit. So that's why I was saying, like, you don't have to feel like you pick one thing. You just,
I think just to continue to be brave,
yeah.
bravery is always a word I have like kind of given myself, but but their bravery is so different, and it's teaching me to be brave in a different way too. So yeah, I think being, having courage, being brave, and to always and to never stop doing that.
Yeah.
Being brave for yourself, being brave for others, being brave when it's hard, being brave even when it's easy, just always being brave. Yeah.
Which, I mean, in order to be brave, you gotta be vulnerable.
You got to be vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be brave, there's also a little essence of being scared, of having some fear.
One of my favorite lines from a book
Mm-hmm.
and a TV show, first book, season 1 of Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
Bran, after Ned executes this guy that left the wall, Bran is asking him about when he was at war, and he
Mm-hmm.
says something about, were you afraid? And he's like, absolutely, I was afraid. And he said, oh, I thought that you were very brave. And Ned says, it's impossible for a man to be brave without being afraid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which is it's part of the human experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And something else that comes to mind, which is actually one of my favorite quotes, but I feel like it associates with the people I work with too, is it's by Maya Angelou, and she says, you're going to forget what people say, you're going to forget what people do, but you're never going to forget how people make you feel.
Yeah.
And, that resonates with them too.
Tell me something that you do to take care of yourself.
Oh, I love this question.
Is that one easier?
What?
Is that one easier?
Yeah, I love it. Well, yeah, it is easier. During the pandemic, actually, I discovered the difference between not like through other people.
Yeah.
The difference between self-comfort and self-care.
Oh.
So self-care is long-term. Self-comfort is short-term. And so, I'm trying to be even more aware of that. But, I try to drink my water. I try to drink my decaf green tea with the antioxidants. I love hiking. I try to hit all the components, being with people that I love and that support me and that I love and support them. Socially, emotionally, spiritually, just trying to always tap into those things to make sure that they're strong within me,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Practicing active connection with yourself and with others and with your higher power. That's wholeness.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it. And a guinea pig doesn't hurt. I have a guinea pig and I love him so much. So.
Question, do they really scream at night?
Mine does not.
Okay. No. I was always told by my parents that I could not get one because they scream at night.
I mean, I have also heard that, but he only screams when he's in pain. So I don't know if the guinea pigs are in pain at night.
Okay.
or like lonely.
Yeah.
Discomforted,
That's a different kind of pain. Yeah. So let's say that somebody is listening today and rightfully so, they think to themselves, Sarah's just the absolute best. And they want to connect with you as a client or to take advantage of the services. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. And, I'll just throw this out here, obviously we serve people with disabilities. So if you know someone with a disability that could benefit from drama therapy or a day program or different types of classes to, continue their growth or their purpose. Or if you are, a creative and want to help with anything that we do film-wise or performance-wise or dance-wise, or visual art. We love volunteers. We have all kinds of stuff going on. So you would reach me at Sarah with an H at friendslife.org. And that is friends, FRIENDS, life, LIFE.org. And again, that is Sarah with an H.
Yeah. Very important distinction.
Yeah, very.
Oh my gosh, Sarah, I can't even begin to tell you how much I've enjoyed.
Yeah, this has been really fun.
Thank you so much for coming on. And can't wait to have you back.
Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thanks so much for joining me this week in the theater. I'll make sure I save a seat for you and a friend next week. Let's raise the lights, lower the curtain, and say that for this week, the theater is closed.